Hello and welcome to Author Academia. Vague, ambiguous, you may have heard these words used synonymously when describing something that is unclear. I was introduced to the concept of ambiguity by the Vsauce video titled, Why Are Things Creepy? But I never really had a full understanding of what ambiguity and vagueness means when writing, or in general really, until I did some research. If we look at the Oxford Dictionary's definition for these two words, ambiguity is listed as the quality of being open to more than one interpretation, inexactness, where vagueness is listed as of uncertain, indefinite, or unclear character or meaning. In other words, ambiguity is when you have two or more possible outcomes and you know for certain that one of the outcomes is the true outcome, but it is difficult or impossible to tell which one. An example would be Let's Make a Deal. Let's Make a Deal is an American game show that has a segment where contestants open doors or envelopes to receive prizes. Imagine you are a contestant on Let's Make a Deal and there are two doors before you. The doors look exactly the same. The only difference between the doors is that one has a prize behind it and the other has a goat. You don't know which door has the prize and which has the goat, but you step up and open a door. Now, dear viewer, what do you find behind the door? You know that you could either win the prize or lose and get the goat. Unfortunately, I'm a malicious author. Unless I tell you if you win or lose, you'll never know for sure, and this is ambiguity. This is a dynamic which website Literary Devices explores a great deal using The Lady or the Tiger, a story written by Frank R. Stockton, as a case to portray the ambiguous door. Check it out. Literary Devices has lots of interesting and helpful resources. Now that we're properly confused about what ambiguity is, what about vagueness? Remember Oxford Dictionary's definition of uncertain, indefinite, or unclear character or meaning. Vagueness is when details about a thing are not specific, so that thing as a whole is unclear and not fully understood. Let's go back to our Let's Make a Deal example. You, as the contestant, are to open one of the two doors, but you have no idea what is on the other side. You have no idea if there will be a prize, or a goat, or anything. You aren't sure if there are even two choices. Both doors could have the same thing. Now, dear viewer, what do you find behind the door you choose? You have no clue. Since I have been vague and haven't given you any possible outcomes, it is entirely uncertain, indefinite, and unclear what lies behind either door. I've done my best here to explain the differences between ambiguity and vagueness. Basically, in ambiguity, you have separate choices and you're unsure which choice is right, where in vagueness, you haven't been given enough information and so you're unsure about the general thing. As the website ThoughtCo describes it, thus, ambiguity corresponds to separation and vagueness to unity of different meanings. Now, with all that figured out, how does this have anything to do with immersion? Well, ambiguous and vague prose has the potential to break immersion if used ineffectively or accidentally. The first problem writers will run into will stem from their prose being not specific enough. I had a high school English teacher who would jump up in front of the classroom anytime someone wasn't being detailed enough and do the be specific dance, which, I'll leave it at that. But she was right. If your intention is for readers to understand what you're trying to write, be specific. Don't overload on the detail, but make sure it's clear what's going on. Your first job as a writer is to ensure that your readers can understand what you're trying to say. You could write the most moving description of cream cheese on toasted bagels in the world, but if no one else can understand it, then what's the point? Jefferson Smith from website Creativity Hacker brings in a fantastic example from Saunière, The Last Descendant, written by Megan Haskell, which begins with the following. With a deep breath, Rye left the pretensions of the high court and its glittering throng behind her. The portal stretched and squeezed, drawing her cell by cell from the hard marble hall into soft sand touched by gentle waves. I think it's fairly obvious to any reader that Megan Haskell's prose is both vague and ambiguous here, noticeably so in the second sentence, and this is probably in larger part due to her word choice not being specific enough. I've yet to read the book, but I would wager Haskell wants to create a sense of mystery around what's happening and is intentionally being vague, but her execution is what stumbles here, specifically the end of the second sentence, into soft sand touched by gentle waves. I don't want to pick on Megan, but think about the end of the sentence there. What do you think of when I say, drawing her cell by cell from the hard marble hall into soft sand touched by gentle waves? I think the into right there is particularly problematic because it makes me question if Rye teleported herself into the sand of the beach, which I don't think is what the author intended. This is how I would rewrite the sentence, preserving as much of Haskell's description and mystery as possible. With a deep breath, Rye left the crowd of glittering, pretentious faces behind her. The portal stretched and squeezed, dematerializing her cell by cell from the hard marble hall of the High Court to reassemble on the soft, damp sand of a beach. I cut out any vagueness and ambiguity that contributed to confusion rather than mystery. To do this, I made sure the reader knew generally where Rye was, in the marble hall of the High Court, and where Rye was headed, the soft sand of the beach. I also replaced Haskell's use of drawing to describe Rye teleporting and instead used dematerialized and reassemble, which makes much more contextual sense when paired with the description cell by cell. Another quick tip I'd like to interject: if you as a writer manage your prose within a context while being sufficiently specific, I don't think you'll have a problem avoiding accidental vagueness and ambiguity. Another example of accidental ambiguous prose is the unanchored pronoun. I made a video talking about this, but to explain it briefly, an unanchored pronoun occurs when the reader can't tell how the pronoun, he, she, or it, exists in relation to the rest of the sentence, which causes confusion. This can be remedied by being more specific about how the pronoun is related to the rest of the sentence. Another example is something I can't find the specific literary name for, so I'll simply call it trivial vague dialogue. If you happen to be a fan of the CinemaSins YouTube channel, you'll know that sometimes there's a scene that goes something like this. He's coming to pick us up. Who's coming? Sammy. Essentially, the character saying he's coming to pick us up knows Sammy's name but is written being vague in order to get the other character to ask him a question. This trivial vague conversation has the potential to annoy readers because quite simply it's unnecessary. Best just to have the character be specific in the first place unless there's actually a good reason for them not to be. So our better version is, Sammy's coming to pick us up. Also, before I go, know that vagueness and ambiguity aren't inherently a bad thing in writing. In fact, when done well, they are incredibly powerful and effective. For example, Toni Morrison has written a short story called Recitatif, where the main character is an unreliable narrator, leading to many ambiguities, the most important being that it's impossible to differentiate the race of the two main characters. All you know is that one is white and the other is black. This shows the reader that skin color preconceptions are baseless and illogical. It's a masterpiece you should certainly read if you like ambiguity and want to see a literary expert wield it. That's all the time I have for this video. I might make a part 2 since I really only scratched the surface on ambiguity and vagueness. We shall see. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.